Downtown Development Authority for September 5th. Joe, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Newcomb Clark, Russ Collins, Bob Gunsel, Lee Gunn,
Here.
Roger Hewitt,
Here.
John Keacha,
Here.
Joan Lowenstein,
Here.
John Mowat,
Here.
Peter Nassif, Keith Orr,
Here.
Sandy Smith,
Here.
John Split.
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Nicely done.
Audience participation, we have one person who has signed up to speak to us, Jennifer Hall from the Ann Arbor Housing Commission. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm here from the Ann Arbor Housing Commission. My name is Jennifer Hall. I'm the Executive Director. And I'm actually here to make a request for funding from the Affordable Housing Fund. If you're not familiar with our organization, we are the Public Housing Authority for the City of Ann Arbor. That's our jurisdiction for our actual units that we own, which is about 360 scattered site. We also have 1,400 vouchers that we manage throughout the whole entire county. The type of people that we serve are 90% or more are actually at the extremely low income. Most of the folks who live in our units are disabled, elderly, and many of them don't have jobs. And so we serve really the lowest income folks in the community. And of all of our units that we own, we only have one that's actually in the DDA district. And that's Baker Commons, and it's on the corner of Packard and Main Street. So I'm actually here to make a request for funding for a current urgent need that we have, which is for a roof. Apparently this roof has had ongoing leaking problems, and we've been patching it periodically, but in the past year or so it's just gotten much worse. There's been leaking into units, there's been damage to the trusses, so we finally went out and got a bid just recently, and what we decided to do is, for all of our units, we're really moving towards trying to do more long-term cost savings. Sorry, I have a bronchitis, sorry. Long-term cost savings and doing more green products. And so rather than replacing it with an asphalt roof, we looked at doing some kind of product that was going to last a lot longer and have longer cost term savings. So we bid it out as a steel roof, and we got our bid back at $246,000. The advantages to that, there's lots of them to having a steel roof, and I've got a sheet in front of you, and you can see some of the advantages and disadvantages. So the only disadvantages is the upfront cost. It does cost about 3 times more than asphalt roof. However, it can last forever. As long as you keep repainting it, the guarantee is 20 years for the roof and the paint job. As long as you keep repainting it, you should never have to take it down and replace it. And if you've been to that building, we probably haven't been to the building, but if you walk by it, you can see how steep the pitch of the roof is. It's a very expensive kind of project, no matter what kind of roof you put on, just because it's a high-rise and it's very steep pitch. So we really just wanted to go through, get it done once, and have it last for a long time. And while I'm here, I also wanted to talk to you about what we're really trying to do across all of our projects is to, like I said, do more energy efficient savings. And there's a couple things that would have some good paybacks right away that we'd like to also add. One is programmable thermostats, which really benefits the tenants because it affects their utility costs, as well as occupancy sensors for our interior lighting in our common areas for savings on our utilities. And so on the steel roof, some of the benefits are there's virtually no off-gas, it's resistant to wind, fire, mildew, insects, rot. It extends the life of your air conditioning and units, it reduces your attic temperatures, and it decreases your energy usage overall. It decreases the heat island effect, and actually the product that we've chosen is made in Michigan. The programmable thermostats, it's hard to know exactly how much you'd save because the tenants choose how they want to set their temperatures, but typically it's at least going to be $50 a year. These are all one-bedroom units. And our tenants that are at Baker Commons are, almost all of them are either disabled or elderly. That's all single-bedroom units. So they're almost all of them on a fixed income. And then the sensors for the interior lighting estimated to save $770 a year. And we also have some other items we're looking at doing. I just don't have, I'm not to the point of having cost estimates, so I just listed some of the things that we're doing. We have a new facilities manager who is really looking at doing preventative maintenance and looking at all the ways we can save costs. And he actually thinks that we could get our building LEED certified based on a lot of the work that we've done in the near future. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to participate? Okay, seeing none, we will go then to reports from city boards and commissions. Ray Detter, Downtown Area Citizens Advisory Council.
Last night's meeting of the Downtown Area Citizens Advisory Council was almost entirely devoted to reviewing a rather large packet of articles on housing and commercial development issues that reported in the months of June, July, and August. That's since the CAC's last regular meeting in June. Our July meeting actually was a tour of the Zaragoza West, which we found very interesting. And then we, of course, in August, we had a meeting with Amber Miller and Susan Polley as a stakeholders group to take the Connecting William Street survey dealing with future priorities and strategies for the 5 downtown city parking sites. So those two things were on our mind as we met last night to discuss all of these things that we had in this packet. And under the headings of building boom and tight rental market, which you undoubtedly saw too, our discussion included, this is kind of a list, but nonetheless it's very significant with regard to what it is that's going on. The underground parking structure, the Lake Transit Center, the Ann Arbor District Library, as well as the Varsity Project, 618 South Main, the Landmark, Zaragoza West, City Apartments, the Greek Church, Ed Shaffron, and his plans to put condos and apartments on top of the 3-story Goodyear building on Main Street, Howard Frise's building on South State Street, and his plans to put a perhaps high-rise on the back of that building, Barracuda, and plans for the former Borders building, Zingerman's additions, the White Market closing, and the vote on public art. We also included a couple of unannounced developments that we know about but have not yet been reported in the newspapers. One of those being, and some of you probably already know that, Ed Shaffron's purchase and plan to put apartments in the Carl Brower building on Catherine Street and 5th Avenue. And the recent purchase also of Papa John's Pizza and also the house next door from the Zahn family by the Connecticut firm Greenfield Partners. They've already bought, spending $4.5 million, the former Bruce Thomas property, which is just to the west of Sloan Plaza. And now what they're going to do is extend that project all the way to Division Street. And we're hoping as a result of the addition of these properties that we'll get a better designed building than we would have otherwise gotten, and more protection for the people in Sloan Plaza as well. So we're definitely supporting that. We're supporting a lot of other stuff, which is currently going on because we feel directly connected to that because we're so much a part of the whole A2D2 process. We've actively supported all of them, although in each case we've tried to make them a bit better. And we've been able to do that to some degree as a result of having helped to create the Downtown Design Review Board and process. But we also discussed the news report of possible DDA support of proceeds, possible DDA support of using proceeds from the future sale of 5 parking sites in the downtown to go toward affordable housing with the city's housing trust fund. And Jennifer has just done a presentation with regard to this, and of course we didn't plan it together. But members of the CAC have always supported affordable housing. The CAC members asked me to caution the DDA and the City Council that we are committed to maintaining and improving existing safe and affordable low-income housing in the downtown, whether it's in the Delanis Center, Baker Commons, or the privately owned Courthouse Square, where I know there are legal questions with regard to it, but we've done it before, and that place is in trouble, and it needs help if there's going to be money available to handle that. Also, where affordable housing is increased in the near downtown, we generally support preserving and rehabbing existing housing units for low-income occupants rather than tearing down existing affordable housing to build new. Finally, the wide-ranging discussion of last night ended with a discussion of the CAC's commitment to developments outside the DDA area. Generally, we avoid this because we don't want to be lobbied by developers. We don't want to be involved in that, although each one of us can be involved in it as an individual. As a group, sometimes we don't take positions. Usually we don't take positions in those areas. But we all agreed last night that in the future, part of our efforts should be directed to the future of North Main, including the extension of the Allen Creek Greenway, the DTE site, and a comprehensive plan for the Huron River frontage. And it must also include all developments of public transportation, particularly the future of the railroad and the site of the future railroad station. Like it or not, these are considerations that are going to impact the downtown, and we feel that we want to be a part of that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. The next item, communications from DDA members. Comments? Anyone? John?
I have a couple of them I'd like to make, a couple of comments and reports. The first, I appreciated the input that we received from Jennifer Hall, and given that she oversees, her organization oversees what I think is at the core of our affordable housing effort, I would look very favorably if there's any way that we can help with this initiative. Steel roof sounds like a great idea, and the energy saving things as well to assist Baker Commons. And again, it's the one unit in the downtown area that we can affect. Housing commissions across the nation, if you take a look at the 30-year trend and what's happened to funding, it's been going down. No matter actually who's in power in Washington, D.C., it continues to go down, sometimes not as fast as others. But anything that we can do, I would be supportive of that. And the second, I just wanted to report back, I made a presentation actually the same day that the DDA was there to the Parks Advisory Commission. I talked about possibilities of redoing Liberty Plaza to make it into a better park than it is, although I think it's come a long ways over the years. There's more that can be done to improve that, and we've engaged our landscape architect at the city as well as people in the parks to begin to look at that. And they're looking not only at a timeline, and they put together actually a timeline. They're looking at public input, they're looking at partners, and they're looking at possible grant possibilities. So lots of things going on there. Also talked about, just as ancillary to that, about other parks initiatives and how we need to come up with a way to prioritize those, because we have the Greenway before us. We're working on both 415 and the 721 North Main site. To possibly the 721 North Main site will be the first of the Greenway parks, and there's a lot of work the city's putting into to make that happen right now, and prioritizing that with some other needs as the property that will probably or hopefully come to us after the DTE cleanup along the Huron River. So again, the Liberty Plaza was what I led off with, and hopefully it's something that DDA members will see that they want to participate in as time goes on, as we did the last time work was done there.
Okay. Anyone else? I think what we could do with Jennifer Hall's proposal is refer to the Partnerships Committee, and they could take it up and come back to us with a recommendation. The next item is the approval of minutes for the July 2nd, 2 meetings, the monthly meeting and the annual meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any additions, corrections? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Approved. Subcommittee reports. Partnership Economic Development Committee, Sandy and Joan.
I'll let Sandy start it off.
Okay, so on page 9, you will see a resolution, and I will begin by moving this, and we can go into...
Is there support? Thank you.
So this was brought to the Operations Committee for discussion, and I would love to have somebody give a synopsis, as I was not there, of what went on. But just to highlight it for those that may not be familiar, I am bringing a proposal on September 17th to City Council that will direct the proceeds from the sale of city property to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We have not had a tremendous amount of success in building affordable housing. It is something that I've watched us struggle with my time here and my time on council. So we have not had a great track record for it. We do have the Baker Commons as the one unit in the downtown, and that is, I mean, they're here now, Housing Commission, asking for some help with that. So the funds need to come from somewhere. We're not delivering what we need to, whether either downtown or in the near downtown. And then the recent failure of the Near North project kind of hammers the point home.
So I would like to ask for the DDA support in bringing this forward. The resolution is not finished, so I know that this is a little, there's some ambiguity about it, so we're not 100% clear on the details of what it is, but that we're asking for. But I think that the request for the DDA support is to say that the DDA agrees with the overall concept, for one. And for two, that if there were a payback on some of the contributions, that the DDA is willing to forego those dollars.
Any further comments?
I think the only question, this is just for clarification, that the proceeds from the sale would be after the payment of any debt that is attached to those properties. So
I don't know.
I know
Is that still something that's up in the air?
So
That's up to something I think your resolution.
Absolutely. So getting down to the nuts and bolts of it. So I think that it's not a benefit to the city to leave it having to pay off a debt that with nothing behind it. I mean, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So proceeds would tend to be more net than.
Yeah, I guess I'm comfortable with proceeds. I mean, this is an advisory resolution only. Is clearly a city council decision.
Right, and I think what the request from the DDA would be, the DDA has made ongoing, for instance, on the Y-Lot, ongoing interest payments. And this would be foregoing a repayment of the interest payments that have been made.
John?
Yeah, I support this notion. I think it's a terrific idea. Obviously the devil's in the details of what proceeds are. There'll be a lot of discussion about that. But from my perspective, I prefer not to see it just go into the general fund. And I'd also like some consideration, given the fact that we're still working on the Connecting William Street project, of looking at the 5 parcels and what uses will ultimately be on those parcels and what character they'll have. And some of the things that are out there as possibilities, include performance space, parks, all kinds of things, good architecture, sustainability. So there are things out there that are still to be determined what the community envisions for those parcels, but there could be some things that we need to do as incentives that might require some dollars. But from my perspective, I like the idea of, conceptually either reinvesting it straight into those parcels or going to the housing fund, but not to the general fund.
Any further comments? John?
I appreciate Roger's comment about that there are outstanding debts on some properties. We had, in fact, had a proposal 2 meetings ago to put to explore putting the property on the corner of William and 5th on the market. I was against that at the time, although I see merit in it, at least as something to explore in the future. But we, of course, didn't want to interrupt the DDA process that is underway, and council agreed that that was overall that was a good position. But I would just remind you that this will only be as strong as the 6 council members who sit around the table at the time. I would also note that there are obviously other capital needs that will come along, that some of them will be great, and some of them will actually, we don't know that they won't affect making life easier for the population that we would hope to assist with this. I would offer an amendment, and that would, just because I also want to be consistent with when this comes to the council table, and I don't know that we need to amend it to understand. I'm sure Sandy will work that into her resolution about that there are debts that need to be paid. We'd all like to get out from under that, but I would amend it to say to direct a percentage of proceeds from the sale of city-owned surface parking lots, rather than just to say the proceeds. So my amendment would be to say to direct a percentage of the proceeds from the sale of city-owned surface parking lots.
Is there support for the amendment?
Support.
Roger? Okay, discussion on the amendment. No discussion. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The amendment carries. So we added that to the resolution, and you will see that that takes place. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you.
a partnership meeting this during August, and so there isn't anything really to report for partnerships in general, but we have been moving forward with connecting William Street, and we have been busy meeting with groups and presenting some draft scenarios to groups of people. In the month of August alone, we've met with 11 different citizen groups and area associations and commissions, and there are more to come in September. And we've held some public meetings and webinars. 2 more of these are coming up. There's a public webinar this evening at 7 p.m. and you can get details for registration on the DDA site. Any of you who even want to just kind of sit in on the webinar, it's a fun thing to do, and it's really interesting to see how people can participate, and even without all being face-to-face, maybe sometimes better than being face-to-face, but you do have to have your computer there and be able to be in a place where you can either use headphones or to hear what's going on. So it's really almost just like a public meeting, and you can see all of the scenarios and drawings that we have right there on screen. Then there's another public meeting September 10th at noon in the public library. And that, of course, is just more traditional, where we have all the scenarios up on a PowerPoint and still ask people to fill out their suggestions on paper. And same questions are being asked of all the different groups with respect to these different scenarios. And hopefully, again, what we end up with is is somewhat generalized idea of a consensus with respect to massing, density, those kinds of things. We aren't proposing very particular kinds of uses to people, although we are suggesting things like residential, office, retail, hotel, lodging, those kinds of things. But other than that, we're not getting a whole lot more specific. We're going to hear an update about these at our September partnerships meeting, and also discuss how DDA can play a role in policy recommendations, including future transportation and public parking. So we will have saved up all kinds of good stuff for our September partnerships meeting, right, Sandy?
Absolutely.
Okay,
And when is that?
That is September 12th at 9 a.m.
Here at the DDA
Right
office. And everyone is welcome. Anything else?
One quick follow-up on that too is that part of the idea is to have our land economist, Todd Poole, weigh in on the final scenario to give some input. And that speaks directly to what we were referring to with the sale of the properties and so forth. So that should fit in nicely.
Great, thank you. The next item is the Operations Committee. We'll start with Roger Hewitt.
Okay, thank you. First on our agenda on page 10, we have the final financial reports for the just past fiscal year that ended on June 30th, 2012. These are unaudited, as our audit is are we underway on the audit, or they started?
We're all set. We have not heard.
We've not heard from the auditor, but we're all ready for the auditor. And so these are unaudited, but what we believe will be final figures. We will compare them with the budget as we amended it, I believe, at the May meeting, or June meeting? May meeting. So there should not be too much change except in the area of capital expenses. Because we are required to show fund balances that are positive, and because we are having large capital expenses because of the underground parking structure, we put all the conceivable capital expenses related to the underground structure in the last fiscal year, even though we did not really expect that those would all take place then, but we wanted to make sure that we stayed within the letter of the law. So the major variations are capital expenses that were not spent in the last fiscal year but will be spent in the current fiscal year. So if you want to look at the first two columns, we'll compare the year-to-date, meaning that's the actuals, is the first column, and the budget as we amended it in May, the comparisons. As you can see, On our TIF, income was very, very close to what we budgeted, as were operating expenses. Capital expenses, as I just described, were about $2.4 million less than we budgeted. That money, again, will be spent in this current fiscal year. So overall, we were under budget by $2.4 million. Very similar situation to parking. Again, the actuals in the first column versus the budget in the second column, very, very close on parking income. Operating expenses, that's where the capital expenses showed up about a little under $800,000. Less was spent than was budgeted, but will be spent in this current fiscal year. Direct parking expenses, again, very close, slightly under what we had budgeted. So overall, we've got $845,000 more income than we had expected, or that we had budgeted, but again, that will be money that we spend in this current fiscal year. Same thing on parking maintenance. In this case, about $1.4 million was not spent on the structure in the last fiscal year, but will be spent in this current fiscal year. Housing, very similar, other than interest rates are a little higher than we expected, so we had a little more income than anticipated. And I, with Joe's assistance, will be glad to answer any questions, but again, it's very close to what we budgeted in our May budget adjustment, with the exception of those capital expenses.
Any questions?
Okay.
Moving on.
Page 11 is simply a graphic representation of this, and as you can see, the actuals and the budgeted, the dark line being the actuals and the lighter line being the budgeted, are very, very close on all of them, except where there were capital expenses involved in parking maintenance, and TIF. There's some more details. I'll just briefly go through the fund balances at the end of the fiscal year. On page 12, our total fund balance in TIF is a little over $3.6 million. And next one. In housing on page 14, our fund balance is a little over $1 million in the fiscal year. Parking fund balance at the end of the fiscal year is about $2.1 million. And parking maintenance is about $1.6 million. So all of our funds have a very solid fund balance. And again, some of that will be spent on the completion of the underground structure, but the total budget amount, total fund balance is quite comfortable to take care of those additional expenses. All right. Any questions on fund balances? Okay, none. If we go to page 23, we have a series of parking occupancy and revenue reports. And the trend that we have been seeing for the last 12 months, and is indeed increasing in the last probably 6 months, of significantly higher revenues in the parking system, the result of higher usage, partially rate increases, but probably the majority of that being greater usage in the parking system. In June, revenues are up 19% over the previous June. Hourly patrons are up 2.65%, which essentially means that people are down, the hourly patrons are staying longer, and there's more usage in the of the meters. But the revenue increase is very significant. Of that 19%, probably 6 to 8% is the amount of the rate increase. So we're seeing probably a 10% increase in revenue, which reflects an increase in usage in the system. So the We are fortunate the library lane structure is open because there is clearly demand for it. If you look on page 24, looking at the fourth quarter, again, revenues for the fourth quarter were up 14%. Hourly patron numbers are about level. And if you look at 25, the last 12 months of in the parking system, overall revenues have been up 12%. Again, roughly 2/3 of that is probably due to rate increase, and the balance of that is increased demand in the system. And again, hourly patrons up about 2%. So hourly patrons are clearly staying longer, as well as more usage in the on the parking meters. So all in all, demand and the financial stability of the parking system is very strong. And again, we are fortunate that we have the library lane structure open. In fact, on page 26, in fact, this is July that we slipped in. If you wanted to look at library lane, although it was only open for approximately a week, we still had almost 4,000 hourly patrons and almost $45,000 of revenue out of that structure in the probably 10 days it was open. So pretty good. And I should compliment, we had a first ever during the art fair. I want to compliment Art Lowe and his staff on this. On the Friday of art fair, for the first time in the history of the parking system, at one time every single space in every single parking structure was full. Never has happened before. Now, of course, it was art fair, but there have been a lot of art fairs, and this includes the 3 levels of the underground parking structure that were open to the public. So it was, it had a very, very busy day. And indeed, we looked at art fair revenues, and I think they were up 30% this year. Well, yeah, art fair revenues this year are up about 30% over art fair last year. And again, a lot of that is having exit capacity. A lot is very good management of getting people into the structures. So, questions?
Questions for Roger? Okay, the next item is our
I've
parking.
got one more.
Oh, you're going to do the parking equipment upgrades.
Yeah.
Okay.
As I think we've mentioned in the past, we are switching the 4th and Washington parking structure and also the Liberty Square parking, 4th and Washington parking structure to an automated system where you pay on foot and then just put your card in, your parking stub in as you leave, which should, there will be attendants available in the structure, but there will not be attendants at the exit. This is the way a number of larger parking systems are moving, and it makes for both shorter lines in exiting and a more efficient operation. So we are in the process of putting the new equipment in and starting that up in 4th and Washington right now. We have just completed the installation in Liberty Square. Liberty Square, as you may remember, has been strictly monthly parking. We've had well over 100 monthly parkers move into the new underground structure. So we are opening up some hourly spaces now in Liberty Square. And again, we're using the automated system where you pull a ticket on your way in, walk up, when you're ready to leave, you walk to a kiosk and pay either with a credit card or cash at that kiosk. It validates your ticket, and then you just put your ticket in the machine as you leave. We have attendants in both structures to help people through the process, as well as provide eyes in the structure. So instead of being at the, it's not that we're removing people from the structure, but we're putting them and using them, I think, more effectively, both doing maintenance in the structures and walking through the structures and providing assistance. So that's a lot of work and a lot of new equipment that staff has had to go through, Republic Parking has had to go through at the same time of opening the new 700 space underground structure, library lane structure. So they've been very busy. But the numbers are, the revenue numbers are pretty encouraging. And I think that's all I've got.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any questions?
Do you have anything to
Not really, other than punch list items are still being worked on in the library lane parking structure. And we hope to have those finished very soon.
But all 4 levels are open and in use?
Yes, the structure is open and operating.
John Moet, Transportation.
Well, thank you. Well, as a follow-up to Roger's report, we're going to be out of parking soon. So I think we're going to obviously have to redouble our efforts to look at other transit options and non-motorized options for folks. And so it just happens that staff brought to our transportation committee this last month an idea for how to enhance use for bicyclists of the system. And that is to, at Maynard Street, create a bike cage or a bike station, a place where folks can have their bikes secured with a swipeable pass and be able to access those areas. And needless to say, if we take 1 or 2 parking spaces, you can fit a lot of bikes in that area. The way these things are designed is you can go in and you hang the bike vertically. And there are a lot of bike stations all over the country, and our hope is that this is sort of a market that will encourage those people, especially those folks with high-end bikes or have concerns about the security of their bikes and so forth. They'll be undercover, so it seems like a great idea. And so the next steps include getting cost estimates for doing it. It shouldn't be terribly expensive. There's not a lot to it. And getting some sort of more details together about how the program would be implemented and how it would be controlled. Anyone have any questions about that notion?
This is for,
I really appreciate the idea. That's great. We think of people as making their principal transportation investment in their automobile. There are certainly people around who are making their principal transportation investments in their bicycles, and knowing that there's a secure, safe place to put that.
And needless to say, you can imagine up by Maynard. Maynard is a great location for
Yeah.
doing a trial program.
It's exciting.
And if it's successful there, obviously we would turn our attention to other places. So that one of the questions is, how far will people walk? Where you're going to park your bike in relation to where you're trying to get to. And this would mean people would be going to a more centralized place and then walking to work. But we feel that there's going to be a market for it. People need options, and it's one way too to help reduce the number of bikes that are on the streets. Which, speaking of which, there has been some ongoing discussion about what to do about abandoned bikes. It's a real challenge because the police don't really have the resources to deal with it. But as folks may remember, the DDA had a role in trying to tag bikes that were abandoned, but apparently that has been deemed inappropriate at this point. And so, it's an ongoing challenge that Amber's working with folks on, and hopefully that will be something that can be dealt with. Sandy, you had a...
is this meant for daily storage or longer term?
Long-term storage. That's actually a good question, Amber. I don't know if you've got anything to add about that, or sort of thinking about it.
Come to the podium so people can hear you. Thank you.
The concept is that it would function more as a commuter storage, similar to someone comes and they drive their car to the central parking structure and then they walk to work. They drive their bike to a central cage and then walk to work.
Obviously, from an operations point of view, how to manage it as such is the trick.
Is there a cost to the bicycles?
Yes, we would anticipate there would be. We need to work out some of those details.
I think we also said at the meeting that each space or that each cage could hold approximately 50 bikes. So the possibility there is obviously pretty great to have a lot of bikes in there. So it's a pretty efficient way to use the space.
The other thing that I like about it too is that, I can imagine use for commuters that there's a certain amount of number of people getting there at the same time, a certain amount of sort of camaraderie and sort of talk of using bikes. And, I think it's something that helps to sort of grow that market in a way, and it gives a little more visibility to places. And one more thing for people to sort of talk about, to say to their friends, hey, you can try riding your bike, and here's a place to put it, and so I think there's sort of a marketing part that's really attractive too. There are no other questions on that. The other thing I want to...
John?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to bring up again something I brought up in the past, and in fact, it was freshened in my mind by talking to a member of the press last night who witnessed an accident on the sidewalk, and I'd like to see the committee really dig into it, and I can see it resulting in public hearings to get more input. But I know the Washington Walking and Biking Coalition's thought about the idea. They've done some work on it, and that is getting bicycles off of downtown area sidewalks. And I would think it's something that we should pursue as we get more and more pedestrians. We're doing more to foster a pedestrian environment. I personally find that there's really no problem riding in the streets in the downtown area. The traffic is not moving at a rapid pace, and I think just about anybody who rides a bike could master that. One of the concerns has been in the past that, well, what about the family that brings kids down to the library or something? There's probably ways to make allowances for that within the ordinance. To say, at a certain age, you're not going to be ticketed, or if you're riding with your children of a certain age. But I think that's probably more of a rare occurrence, and it's something that could be handled within the ordinance. It's the bicyclist careening down the road, as I witnessed with Roger once in front of one of his places, forcing people, and then the bicyclist running off of the sidewalk, the bicyclist running into the chairs of the cafe. And coming close to damaging themselves. Yeah. So I've seen people, just yesterday I saw people barreling down State Street when the sidewalk is full of people. So I think it's an issue that we need to take up.
I think you bring up a good point, even on a more general level. We started looking at sidewalks in general, of how they're used, all the competing interests in our sidewalks downtown, and it's something that I'd like to see us take up again and really do a little bit more study on what we'd recommend for the sidewalks and their usage and so forth. Any other questions? So the other thing that I wanted to bring to your attention relates to watts. Some of you may not know that I'm our DDA rep for Washtenaw Area Transportation Study, which is a group made up of county township officials, city council member, county officials, various folks whose job it is to help sort of guide the direction of transportation spending in the county. And what it mainly is looking at how federal funding comes through the mechanism. The world of transportation is a complex and esoteric world of acronyms and strange things, but in its simplest form right now, the organizing body for those federal funds comes through SEMCOG, Southeastern Michigan Council of Governments, which is a 7-county organization. 7 counties being basically the southeastern Michigan counties, needless to say, dominated by Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties. The challenge at hand, and the reason I'm bringing it here, is for people to be aware that one of the discussions that's going on right now is whether Watts should form, or the Washington County should form its own organization, its own MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, which would in effect replace going through SEMCOG. The reason for this, or the logic why it's been brought forward and it's being looked at by a committee, is the idea that right now it's a very long and complex process going through SEMCOG, results in a lot of time being wasted and delays and so forth. Or wasted, maybe is not the right word, but it takes a while. The other piece to it is that there are folks whose views are that Washtenaw County is really quite unique and different than those other counties in their interests. And many of those other counties' interests have maybe more to do with roads and bridges, and not as much to do with, say, non-motorized projects, transit projects, and so forth, and whether we could represent ourselves as an entity better than through SEMCOG. However, it's not a simple matter, because number one, SEMCOG is vehemently against it, but also MDOT has expressed considerable concern about it. And I personally, I'm concerned about that issue. I think it's easy to look at the idea of the county having control over our own destiny, but I fear the potential repercussions of breaking away from SEMCOG. So it's an interesting issue. It's sort of, hopefully it will come to a boil. There's been a bit of tension, in trying to get meetings with MDOT officials. I've been wanting to meet and so forth and things like that. But hopefully in this next couple of months, some headway will be made on the topic. And I want to thank Lee Gunn. Actually went to the last meeting. I wasn't able to be there and be able to represent our concerns, interests, hear what other people had to say. Unfortunately, it sounds like not really a whole lot new is happened.
Not a lot happened, but you are correct about tension in the room.
Yeah, it's a very tough issue, and part of the reason I bring it up to folks here is that obviously it has an impact on the bigger picture in the community, but also for downtown. I mean, there are certain interests we have in downtown, and whether it's AATA or non-motorized projects or station projects, those sorts of things all have a very direct impact on us, and how this relationship evolves with our partners. MDOT is the vehicle through which this funding comes, and we have to respect what this all means. And I would say that in a way it goes counter to the direction of regional planning. And over the years, things have tended to work towards larger regional planning efforts. So it's a balance between that and our own interests and how we might be best served as a community. So I think it's an interesting issue that folks may want to weigh in on and have thoughts about.
Anything else? And you already announced the next meeting, which is September 26th and 11th for operations. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Other DDA business, we will be having a retreat on the afternoon of November 16th. We will get details to you as to location, and people will be in touch with you about subjects. Are there any other people from the audience who wish to participate? I see Jim Mogensen back there. Come on up. You have 4 minutes.
I just wanted to make some observations about student housing. We all have noticed a lot of major, what are normally called student housing projects. There actually is no zoning for student housing. I bring this up, I lost track of whether or not the state legislature was talking about not allowing local communities to have non-discrimination ordinances. And I don't know if that went forward, but our non-discrimination ordinance says that you can't discriminate based on student status. It doesn't say you can't discriminate against students. It says you can't discriminate based on student status, students or non-students. The reason I bring this up is for two things. These large major projects are not temporary. So if you look at what I call the residential for cash, what we think of as student housing, that is, if it's not in historic district, those structures are temporary. But these other projects are not, would be much more harder to redevelop. They've maxed out where they are and to incorporate those. So they're going to be there. They will probably have to be reused. Think of Courthouse Square. And so this matters to the DDA for a couple of reasons. If the numbers stop working, or if there has been overdevelopment, they'll have to be reused. And if the project numbers stop working, you may end up getting people coming to you asking for some of the tip money. The other thing is, some of these structures have been created with some assumptions about residential behavior, more walking and pedestrian use, and so there's a little, assumptions about less parking. If they're redeveloped for young professionals, I expect that no matter what we hope will happen, the reality is people will have a greater demand for cars, and that will be something you'll need to incorporate into your planning if some of that begins to start, happening. So I just kind of wanted to bring that up as these kind of things are moving forward, to incorporate that kind of as a footnote off to the side to kind of monitor what's happening and think through those kind of things, because over time, it may all of a sudden happen all at once. Even so, when people were talking about behavior, these large, expensive, high-end structures, there is a much difference. There's differences, standards of behavior have changed. Parting behavior is usually not is different, and will be different in these kind of structures, and whether that works out, and how these structures people have made major investments and intend to do that. If that could impact how the numbers work on these projects. So I just wanted to put that forth into the mix of conversations, I think, for my.
Thanks, Jim. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the DDA? Come forward.
Hi, good afternoon. Eric Lipson. I'm the general manager of the Intercooperative Council at the University of Michigan. Our headquarters are at 337 East William, and of course we are very interested in the Connecting William project. I want to thank the DDA members, Amber and Susan, for coming to our organization and taking a poll of doing the survey. In fact, we were the first people that took the survey regarding the various uses for those lots. I'm also here to just keep alive the concept because I'm also a member of the Library Green Conservancy, and I want to keep alive that concept, the possibility of that, some plaza public space on that. Those of you who have passed by there since the completion of the library parking lot have probably seen what I see as I go by there several times a day, that space, especially the space between 5th and the major, I think it's an elevator entrance to the parking structure, is highly underutilized for parking. The lot across the street, the Y lot, is full today, and there were 3 or 4 cars as I came by on the library lot structure. That portion of that lot is so obviously a plaza. It's very interesting, and I think that the mayor had suggested that we form a conservancy, a private conservancy, when we spoke with him at one point on this informally. And in fact, we have formed the Library Lot Conservancy, private conservancy. If that's going to help make that proceed, then we're very encouraged by that. We've also been told by other people that ultimately this decision is going to be a city council decision, because they were the ones, I think Roger had mentioned this to me, that this is ultimately going to be a city council decision, what happens there. So we're still pressing ahead. I don't want to go off the radar. We still think it's a good idea. And I would, again, one more time, if this is my broken record, say that the most comprehensive public process that was conducted by the DDA, funded by the DDA, and conducted by Planning Commission and the DDA was the Calthorpe process. And the Calthorpe process mentioned public space and public plaza, and indicated that the library lot spot would be the perfect place for that in their final map. They mentioned the public plaza, gathering space, central area, dozens of times and on that lot. And there was no mention of conference center. There was no mention of hotel space in that report. And there were over 600 participants in that, and how many charrettes were held. So with that, again, I would just like to keep that in mind. Why did we hold all of those charrettes? Why did we have that public process? Are we now going to ignore what the public, in fact, told us very loud and clear on that space? So that I just want to, again, say that we are not going to go away on this. We're going to continue to advocate for it. We realize there are many other people who are advocating for other things, but that's our position, and just want to thank you for the time and the opportunity to make that point once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Anyone else who wishes to address the DDA at this time? Seeing no one, can we move motion to adjourn? So moved. Support?
Support.